There's a saying my grandmother used to repeat every spring when the red buds started blooming. If the oaks before the ash, we're in for a splash. If the ash before the oak, we're in for a soak. Now, you might hear that and think it's just a cute little rhyme, something to pass the time on a front porch. But for generations of people living in these mountains, those words could mean the difference between a good harvest and a hungry winter. They weren't superstitions, they were survival. Welcome back to Legends from the Holler, where we keep the old stories and mountain wisdom alive. Today, we're not chasing ghosts or strange creatures in the woods. We're looking up to the clouds, the wind, and the changing light to uncover the old ways of reading the sky. Today, we pull out our phones, check the radar, listen to meteorologists with their satellite images and computer models. And that's fine, technology's a wonderful thing. But long before any of that, our people were reading the sky, the animals, the plants, even the ache in their own bones, and they were getting it right more often than not. This is weather lore from the Holler, and it's not just folklore. It's the accumulated wisdom of people who lived so close to the land that they could feel its rhythms like a heartbeat. Let's start with the most obvious place, the sky itself. My grandpa could look at the clouds at sunrise and tell you whether to bring the wash-in off the line or leave it out to dry. Red sky at night, sailor's delight. Red sky at morning, sailor take warning. You've probably heard that one. It's so old it's even in the Bible. But here's the thing, it works. A red sky at sunset means high pressures moving in from the west, pushing dust and particles up where they catch the light. Clear weather's coming. But a red sky at dawn? That means the high pressure's already passed, and there's moisture moving in from the west. Rain's on its way. The shape of the clouds mattered too. My grandmother would point to those tall, towering clouds building up on a summer afternoon, and she'd say, "Storm's brewing. Better get the chickens in." She could tell by how fast they were building, how dark the bottoms got, whether we were in for a soaker or something meaner, and a ring around the moon. That meant rain within 3 days, usually less. That's because those halos form when ice crystals and high cirrus clouds refract the moonlight. And those cirrus clouds often come before a weather front. But it wasn't just the sky folks paid attention to. The animals, they knew things were changing before any human could sense it. When the cows laid down in the field all at once, rain was coming. Now, some folks say that's just coincidence, but others swear those cows could feel the change in air pressure, felt it in their bones, and they'd hunker down to keep a dry spot. Frogs croaking louder than usual, storms approaching. They're more active when the humidity rises, and that croak carries farther in the thick, wet air that comes before rain. And if you saw birds flying low, almost skimming the ground, you'd best finish whatever outdoor work you had because bad weather wasn't far behind. The theory is that low air pressure before a storm affects the birds' ears, so they fly lower, where the pressure's more comfortable. Or maybe the insects they're chasing are flying lower, because their wings get heavy with moisture. Either way, the old-timers knew what it meant. My uncle used to watch the squirrels in the fall. If they were gathering nuts early and building thick, bushy nests high in the trees, he'd stock up extra firewood. The squirrels knew it was going to be a hard winter. The plants spoke to if you knew how to listen. Those redbuds and oaks and ashes I mentioned at the beginning, that wasn't just a rhyme. People watched which trees leafed out first in the spring, and they correlated it with rainfall patterns over years, over generations. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from one person's lifetime. It comes from grandmothers teaching, daughters teaching granddaughters, season after season, noticing, remembering, passing it on. When the leaves on the trees turned upward, showing their pale undersides, rain was coming. The theory now is that the change in humidity and wind direction before a storm makes the leaves twist on their stems. But back then, you didn't need to know why. You just needed to know it was true. And dogwoods, the dogwoods. Plant your corn when the dogwood blooms are the size of a squirrel's ear. That wasn't just poetic. That was practical. When those dogwoods bloomed, the The soil temperature was finally warm enough that the seeds wouldn't rot in the ground. The frost danger had passed. Dandelions would close up their seed heads before rain. Clover would fold its leaves. Even the pine cones had something to say. They'd close up tight when moisture was in the air, open up wide when it was dry. And then there were the aches and pains. Granny's knee is acting up. Storm's coming. You hear that and maybe you think it's just an old person complaining. But there's real science behind it now. When the barometric pressure drops before a storm, it can cause tissues to expand slightly, putting pressure on joints. People with arthritis, old injuries, they feel it first. My great-aunt could predict rain 3 days out just by the way her hands ached, never missed. She used to joke that she was better than any weatherman on TV, and honestly, she was right more often than they were. Some of the weather lore went beyond just tomorrow's forecast. People tried to predict the whole winter based on signs in the fall. If the woolly worms are thick and brown, winter's going to be mild. If they're black at both ends with a thin brown band, hunker down, it's going to be harsh. Now, entomologists will tell you there's no solid evidence for this one, that the caterpillar's colors are more about their age and species than the coming winter. But I'll tell you what, I've met plenty of old-timers who swear by it, and I've never known them to stock up on firewood they didn't end up needing. Hickory nuts and acorns. If it was a mast year, a year when the trees just dumped an abundance of nuts, folks said it meant the trees knew a hard winter was coming. The animals would need extra food, so the trees provided. There's probably something to the biological patterns there, even if we don't fully understand it. In the first 12 days of January, some folks believed those corresponded to the 12 months of the year. How the weather ran on January 2nd would tell you what February would be like. January 7th predicted July. My grandfather kept a notebook, tracked it for years, said it was about 60–70% accurate. Not perfect, but better than a coin flip. You have to understand, this wasn't entertainment. This was necessity. When you lived miles from town, when your livelihood depended on getting crops in and harvested at the right time, when you heated with wood you cut yourself, you needed to know how much to chop, so you paid attention. You watched, you remembered. A farmer who could predict a late frost might save his entire crop by covering the plants one more night. A family who knew a bad winter was coming could make sure they had enough canned goods, enough feed for the livestock, enough wood split and stacked. And there wasn't always money for an almanac, even if you could get to town to buy one. But the sky was free. The animals were there. The plants showed you their signs for nothing but the attention you gave them. We've lost a bit of this now. Most of us anyway. We've gained accuracy. I'm not going to pretend that a woolly worm is as reliable as a modern weather model, but we've lost the intimacy with our surroundings. We've lost the habit of observation. Most people can't tell you what phase the moon is in without checking their phone. Can't tell you which birds are migrating through, can't read the clouds, and I think that's a shame. Not because the old ways were better in every respect, they weren't, but because there's something valuable in paying attention to the world around you, in noticing patterns, in feeling connected to the land and the weather and the seasons in a tangible way. My grandmother didn't just predict the weather, she lived with it. She knew its moods, its rhythms, she respected it. But here's the good news. It's not gone. Not completely. There are still people in these mountains who watch the woolly worms every fall, who notice when the cows lie down, who feel the rain coming in their bones. And more than that, there's a growing recognition that this traditional ecological knowledge, what the scientists call it, now has real value. That indigenous and rural communities around the world have been reading weather patterns, predicting seasonal changes for millennia, and they've often been right. Some of the old weather lore was coincidence, sure. Some of it was pattern seeking gone a bit astray, but a lot of it was careful observation over generations, distilled into sayings simple enough to remember and teach. So the next time you see a ring around the moon, or notice the leaves turning silver before a storm, or hear the frogs singing extra loud on a summer evening, Pay attention. You're hearing the same signs your great-great-grandparents heard, reading the same sky they read, and maybe, just maybe, you'll start to feel what they felt. That deep connection to place. That understanding that you're not separate from the weather and the land and the seasons. You're part of it. You live in it. And if you pay attention, it'll tell you what's coming. That's weather lore from the Holler. That's the wisdom of the old ones. And that's worth remembering. Thanks for watching Legends from the Holler. Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and your heart in the mountains.